Only 0.5 of a second separates the top 4 cars on the starting grid as final preparations get underway for the running of the Drink Drive Sandown 500 here at Sandown International Raceway. It's a quality field here at Sandown today. Sierras, Commodores and Nissans filling the top 3 rows of the grid. And on the 7th position of the grid comes the lone BMW of former world champion Alan Jones. One driver not racing here today, but joining us in central commentary position is Nissan's Mark Scaife. And Nissan, that BMW, must be looking a dark horse in this long race.
I think for sure, John, it's the dark horse of the event. The car will probably only make one stop for the whole race, and it's a little car that conserves its tyres and brakes very well, so they'll give it a big shake towards the end.
What are the tactics for the other teams that have to make 2 stops?
Well, I think mostly those guys will be trying to conserve the tyres. Obviously, at the start, Glenn Seaton and the Commodores will go very, very quickly. The Nissan GTR will probably get off the line and lead for a few laps, and from then on, settle down to a pace that doesn't knock the tyres and brakes around too much.
And the Commodore's very heavy cars.
Well, it's a very, very heavy car, the Commodore, but I think they've sprung the cars very soft here this weekend. If you see the cars, the wheels hike in the air a lot, etc. So I think that they might conserve the tyres better than they ever have.
Well, last year's winner Glenn Seaton is on pole position. Alongside him is Mark Gibbs in the Nissan GTR, but lurking on the second row of the grid are the mobile Commodores of 9 times winner Peter Brock and his partner Larry Perkins. Peter Brock, you've won the race 9 times, but there are much younger men on the front row of the grid.
How about that, Sean? I mean, inexperienced maybe. No, the fact is that the car is running extremely well, and the Holden Commodore is getting more and more competitive, I think, as the races go by. We're a pretty good chance today, I'll be perfectly honest with you. And also, I think we've got a very good team, and that's make a big difference here.
What would the 10th win here at Sandown mean to you?
Oh, it'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be very, very nice. The Group A rules and regulations have never been that kind to a Commodore, and you know, as I mentioned, you know, things are getting better. The car is getting faster, and to get the car up to win would, I think, it'd surprise a few people, particularly when you look at the Sierra and the Nissan.
Tactics today?
Well, tactics, you've got to get into a groove around here. You've got to stroke the car along, and you've got to try not to miss gears, squeeze the foot on the brakes and those sort of things. In other words, run to a plan and try not to let others upset you. It's very easy to get upset and to start chasing or being a little lazy. So I'll be out there to run as fast and as competitively as possible all day.
This is the famous Sandown racetrack, 3.1 kilometres around in its altered form, that's hosted this Enduro since 1964, when it was won by an Alfa Romeo. This is the 26th Sandown Enduro, and this is the situation down on the front straight in front of that enormous grandstand. A race with tremendous atmosphere, always a big and important lead up to Bathurst, but a very important and hard to win race in its own right. And now the tense time before they take off in this race with all the leading car contenders that have fought out the major races this year in the front three grid positions, so that pole position for the first time this year for Glenn Seaton, taken by his Ford Sierra Cosworth Turbo, 1:14.17 his best time, with former motorcycle ace Greg Hansford alongside him. Mark Gibbs and Rowan Onslow have put the 4-wheel drive twin turbo Nissan Skyline GTR onto second position, half a second slower. Heading the second row, the 2 mobile team cars, Peter Brock and Andrew Miedeke, so the first normally aspirated cars, and just 100th of a second away from Gibbs's 4-wheel drive, and then Larry Perkins, Thomas Mazira, both of them Bathurst winners. Indeed, most of the front row former Bathurst winners. Heading the third row of the grid is last year's Bathurst winner, Win Percy, with Alan Grice in a Holden Commodore 1538, Kevin Waldock and Peters, who had to change an engine this morning. They split a bore in their Sierra. A 6th fastest, Crompton and Jones, 7th, and Jones and Fitzgerald, Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald in the BMW M3 could be very significant later in the race. Further down, in 9th position, Hendrick and White in a Commodore. These are VLs, Jones and Lamont. Lamont's from New Zealand. Sala and Lusty are non-starters. They did an engine yesterday, have no spare. And in 12th position, Searle and Griffiths starting off the small cars, the GTI Corolla. Still in that class, in a rear-wheel drive Corolla is 78. Hudson and Carrigan Clark, 3 people to share of Holden Commodore VL, but a bit slow. Conway Gardner, 15th, and Holden and Rogers, Bob Holden, who won Bathurst way back in 66th, bringing up the rear of the grid. So the situation at Sandown, a circuit with tremendous presence, tremendous presentation, and a lot of tension now awaiting the start of this 161 lap 500 kilometre race. Just part of the enormous crowd anticipating a thrilling Sandown 500. Tremendous atmosphere for the start of this race. And the Nissan Skyline GTR on the front row of the grid that's dominated touring car racing this season, slotting in the 05 Mobile Commodore of Peter Brock, the man that won this race 7 years consecutively, 1975 through to 81, as well as winning Bathurst 9 times too. He's won this race in total 9 times, but on pole position, making it 11 poles for Ford, 11 for Holden. Glenn Seaton there in the Ford Sierra number 30. He's won the race before. Mark Gibbs hasn't, but all around him are people who've won this race and Bathurst. A very classy field indeed, and it's Sierra on pole, it's Skyline GTR beside him, and Holden backing up from the second row of the grid, and it's 10 seconds to the start. Engine revs are rising, the crowd's rising. Tremendous excitement, tremendous scene at Sandown. Lights go green and Gibbs blasts away, doesn't get away so well then in second gear, but still maintains his lead. And Seaton absolutely bogs down to 4th place, and lucky to hold on to that. In front of the Holden Special Vehicles car, the 2 mobile Holden Commodores have bolted away and hot on Gibbs' tail. So Mark Scaife immediately, that might muck up what you saw as the early preferred race strategy.
Yes, I think they're now, Will, the Gibbs car, if he gets his head down now and does a good job early, he'll take a bit of beating for the early laps now. Glenn Seaton a little bit further back than we anticipated.
Getting the engine off the turbo, losing boost, and really throwing away all the advantages. He battles here, side by side, and loses the battle with Larry Perkins, so he goes back to 4th. It's Brock breathing on the tail of Mark Gibbs. And nobody in Australian racing, I think, Mark, knows better how to win long-distance races than Peter Brock there in second place.
Yeah, he's positioned himself fantastically. I think Peter will get himself into a rhythm and straight the car along to try not to knock the tyres and brakes around too much. But he's done a fantastic job early.
So Gibbs doing a good job in this car built for them by the Nissan race team, and indeed maintained by that team. Brock hot on his tail, and there is the view that Peter Brock has of this awesome 4-wheel drive twin turbo car. 640 horsepower, is that right, Mark Scaife?
Yeah, it's got every bit of that, Will, and we'll see here where the advantage of the car is. Exit to the out of the slow corners, the car's got so much traction, it's fantastic in those areas.
Tell us how you see it and what the driver's doing, the good and bad points of the car.
Well, there at the moment, you can see the little bit of hop that the car's got coming onto the back straight there, and it's really, it's a little bit difficult there to get a good run. But as you can see now in the fast places, the four-wheel drive car has not as much advantage over the Commodores and Sierras as people probably would think. As you can see, Brock's closed right up there under brakes and is now in a pretty good position coming onto the main straight in a second to give Gibbs a bad time.
Is Brock working his car hard? He seemed to lock a back brake there.
I think he is working the car reasonably hard there, Will, but I think there's a bit of water across the track there, which wouldn't be so comfortable in the early laps.
One of the things with the GTR Skyline is that it has water-cooled brakes.
Yes, the car has sprays, like in the aircraft industry, sprays a water mist in the brake ducting just to keep the rotor temperature controlled, and probably knocks about 30 or 40 degrees Celsius off the brake temperature. But as you can see there, Brock's closed a fair bit under brakes.
Bob Forbes, the team manager of that team, and there's Peter Brock, and he's looking very intense.
He gets that concentrating look on his face, doesn't he? He really is trying hard.
Look at him, clenched teeth. The man is trying hard. 9 times Bathurst winner, 9 times Sandown winner, Australian touring car champion. Peter Perfect, as he was known for many years. He's not that now, but still one of the stars of Sandown, and really doing everything with the Commodore as he got it working under brakes there to stay with what we have to say, I think, is a superior car in front, certainly a superior car technically.
Yes, for sure, Will. I think there now you can see that Glenn's starting to catch, and he'll get up, and the guys will just trying to keep a race pace of sort of 15s and 16s early. and whatever they say they're going to do, you add a second to pretty quickly, and they'll probably end up in the 17s within sort of 20 laps.
The important thing about the water-cooled brakes is that Bob Forbes tells me from that GIO team that in the last 5 to 8 laps of their stint, they will have no water left. The 30 litres will be gone.
Yes, we can change the jet size to determine how much water is sprayed on the brakes. So at this particular place, we've decided to run a reasonably big jet to control the temperature of the brakes all the way through the run and not to worry about it too much towards the end.
And you can also regulate the amount of four-wheel drive in the car. But look at the job Brock is doing in this two-wheel drive V8. Really a very simple motor car doing a marvellous job against a car that is the height of current technology.
No, he is doing a very good job, and also, like as I said before, you can see Glenn catching, but in behind there's Perkins, Wynne Percy and Neil Crompton all torturing each other, trying to stay with the lead cars.
Is one of the things early in a long-distance race like this, trying to get free of traffic and of other people, settle down and do your own thing and look after the car?
Well, you try not to get too much involved in dicing, but it's very, very hard. Obviously, you'd like to get out and get in the fresh air. So now
Larry
you can see
Perkins there, sorry.
The HRT cars in behind Larry, and they're probably wanting, if they could, to slip past. Actually, I think that's Neil Crompton in front of Wynne Percy there.
An important difference between the mobile Commodores and the Holden Special Vehicle Commodores behind is the tyres they're using.
Yes, the Perkins car is on a Bridgestone tyre, and it's a compound called a 62. That's pretty much a mid-race compound. The two HRT Holden Commodores following are on the Dunlop tyre, and they're on a compound 29, which they use at most of the touring car around. So,
and here's Larry Perkins, the man who's won Bathurst 3 times, co-driving with Peter Brock, who's driven Formula 1 so long ago that people forget, but back in '76 I saw him driving a Formula 1 BRM at Brands Hatch. He qualified 11th years ago, and he said the same people who are mucking around and not using money well in Formula 1 then are still doing it, some of the people running the teams and so on. But this form of racing, Mark, really is very professional and very competitive, isn't it?
Well, I think for sure, Will, that we have the best touring car racing in the world and the best touring car drivers in the world. So no one could ever complain about the quality of this field and the quality of touring car racing generally in Australia.